Okay, welcome again to day 4 of our 5-day Design Your Wellness Plan challenge. I know it's a mouthful, but if you've been following us over the past 4 days, you know that we are crafting our wellness plan for the year 2025. So today, we will be diving into avoiding risky substances and building meaningful relationships. Those two pillars are not one to be dismissed because there are real physical health impact from avoiding risky substances as well as building meaningful relationships. So we will be diving into that. You have your workbook to guide you. I will be sharing my screen as always, but if this is too fast for you, there's going to be a replay. So let's dive in. And let me share my screen. All right. So like I said, welcome to day 4. We're going to be designing our wellness plan, and today we're going to be focusing on building meaningful relationships and avoiding risky substances. Okay, so what are risky substances? Typically, when we hear of this word risky substances, we're thinking alcohol, drug use, tobacco, and yes, those are very, very well common. But let's just give a general overview of the definitions. And you'll be surprised at some other risky substances that you may not be aware of that actually has deleterious consequences for your health. So, risky substances, when it comes to your health, or any harmful substances that causes negative health effect. So, for the purpose of your health, we'll limit our discussion to tobacco, recreational drugs, drug use, and alcohol. And we'll be diving into chemicals in processed food that you may not be aware of actually has negative consequences as well. So we all know of the common ones, tobacco, alcohol, and recreational drugs. But today I'll be adding on a little one. Well, not really big, little, it's actually big when you think about the amounts that we ingest daily and how they can really have deleterious effect on our health. So long-term well-being has been linked to minimizing or reducing any of these harmful substances. So they're important and they should be part of your wellness plan for the coming year. Okay, so when we talk about risky substances, I will start with tobacco and nicotine. It's been well studied that smoking increases your risk of lung cancer. And not just that alone, it's the general inflammation that comes from smoking that has other inflammatory health disease processes that can result from smoking. So whether you're directly smoking or you're exposed to secondhand smoke, both of them are equally bad. So if you're smoking, definitely encourage yourself, get the resources that you need. You can speak to your physician about some medications that can help you with smoking. You can get into counseling. You can even consider nicotine patches. But the reason why we're putting this on our plan is so that when you get busy with the year and you revisit your wellness plan, you'll remember that quitting smoking is part of your plan for 2024 or 2025. And if you are exposed to secondhand smoke because someone in the family smokes, or you're really just working around people who smoke all the time, it is important to start looking into the dynamics of those relationships, not only about the social emotional impact of those relationships, but the physical exposure to secondhand smoke is equally bad as well. Also, if you have children around, secondhand smoking is bad for them. So we're not talking about things that you just do willy-nilly. It affects your health, the health of your family, and the health of your children. So there are resources to help you quit. Make a commitment in your workbook today that you will address smoking and explore the opportunities that are available to you to quit smoking and avoid secondhand smoke. Okay, so that's that. Second is alcohol. Alcohol itself has been linked to to liver cancer over time, has been linked to liver inflammation over time, has been linked to central obesity over time. So alcohol in itself, if you don't limit the intake of it, you will get into a challenge where you need more and more and more to actually keep yourself satisfied. So if you're drinking alcohol for the buzz of it, if you start with one bottle or one cup, before you know it, you'll need 2 cups to achieve the same effect, and 3 cups. Then you get into an addiction problem. An addiction problem not only affects your behavior and your ability to keep a job, but also when it comes to your physical health, your liver takes a really hit from it. Your heart does take a hit from it over time. Now, there are studies that shows that, limiting red wine or limited red wine intake actually has some advantages for your heart. But I'm not talking about red wine here, and I'm not talking about, limited alcohol intake. I'm talking about excessive intake. And so for women, no more than 1 drink per day. For men, no more than 2 drinks per day. We'll get into future sessions where we talk about really what is an alcohol intake equivalent, but I'm very simplistic here. If possible, no alcohol intake. If you must do it in moderation. 1 drink per day for women, which is quite excessive if you ask me. 2 drinks per day for men. The problem with allowing a little bit is that if you start on that, you just need more and more to achieve the same effect. And we find that this is how people get into addiction. So avoid binge drinking, excessive consumption, which can harm the liver and the heart and cause mental health concerns. If you ask me, I will say commit to at least cutting that down by 50%. If you're already finding yourself going for, 3 to 4 drinks a day, at least make a commitment today that you will cut that by 50%. The goal is 0, but I understand how challenging this can be. And you don't have to do it alone. There are support groups, Alcohol Anonymous, other ways that you can really help to start cutting down so that you can really protect your health in the long run. All right. So the third risky substance we're going to be diving into is illicit drugs. I won't get into the details of that. A lot of us know opioids, marijuana. Really, there are other illicit drugs that people use. Prescription drug use can also be abused. I won't dive into that as much because usually when it comes to illicit drugs, you may need the additional help of a professional beyond these lectures. But what I will encourage you to do today is to write it down. If you currently engage in any illegal substances, write it down and put a plan in that I will discuss this with my physician, I would discuss it with my practitioner, and I will get the help that I need. At least put it down and then really start looking at your surroundings to see if there's any addiction counseling or rehab that you can start to get more information about. The whole point of drafting our wellness plan is not to do everything at once. I understand that it can be a lot, but at least if you plan, you will most likely get to it. So write it down as a plan and then start to take the steps towards getting the resources that will help you. Okay. Fourth, I'm going to talk about caffeine. So caffeine is one that a lot of us enjoy a cup of coffee here and there, but if we actually add it up, people that drink a lot of coffee sometimes, go for 3 to 4 cups a day. That itself over time actually start to prevent sleep. So you get poor sleep, you get increase in your heart rate, and over time can actually cause you to have behavioral concerns. Not sleeping well reduces your productivity, increased heart rate over time start to cause, heart dysfunction. So I will save you the grief of thinking you have to stop coffee completely. But just like I said with the illicit drugs, write it down. Our goal is to decrease that by 50% over the next 3 months. So write your SMART goal. I will say for myself, decreasing the intake of caffeine over 3 months sounds like a very reasonable plan. But like I always say, this is your plan, this is your journey, customized to your needs. But just know that excessive coffee intake or caffeine intake, about 200 to 300 milligrams per day, should be the limit. You may not know how to count that. So I would just say, starting for now, 1 to 2 cups of coffee a day is maximum. So if you're doing over that, we have a plan for you. Now, don't forget about caffeine in sodas. Don't forget about caffeine in other drinks. So don't just think about coffee alone. There's caffeine that's sneaking into most drinks, Red Bull, energy drinks. So be aware of the other sources of caffeine intake so that you don't end up having the negative consequences of excessive intake on your health. All right, let's talk about risky substances in food. This is going to get a little nerdy, but what I want you to pay attention to are all the additives that I put on the left of my page. So there's 13 food additives to avoid. And I know it makes it difficult for you to start, picking a safe list because some of these things are just in everything that we eat. High fructose corn syrup, partially hydrogenated oil, artificial sweeteners, fruit dyes. The list is on and on and on. What I want you to do is just get familiar with the list on the left here and start to think about when you pick up a canned food from the store, look through the list and see which one you're starting to get an intake of. The problem is that when this food are reviewed by the Food and Drug Administration, for example, there's a dose that they think is okay for your health. But if you end up drinking maybe 3 cans of soda in a day and you're doing zero sweetener, there's something else in the sweetened beverage that makes it sweet. Go find out the name of it. Start to do your research. I don't want you to get overwhelmed, but know the list and start to pay attention to it. Start to look at your food label. You may not be able to do much with it. If you follow me on my journey with Living Edified, you will get more insight into some of these food additives. So, processed meat definitely will contain one of these additives to avoid. Processed food in general, beverages, fast food will most likely contain some of these additives to avoid. Also, pesticide on fruits and vegetable, when you pick them up from the store, the pesticide was not for you. Unfortunately, it was to keep the bugs away. But when you start to take it in high amounts, it starts to have a very bad impact on your health. So it's important to at least know them so you can avoid them. For your fruits, wash them thoroughly before you eat. And also, some kinds of fish, I'm not going to get into the detail of it. I don't want you to start running away from everything, but I want you to be aware of it. So if the only thing you can do in terms of avoiding risky substances is to know these food additives, you are well on your way to start making a change. Okay, that was a lot. Don't forget the workbook is there, the replay is there, and you're going to pick 1 or 2 of these additives and start paying attention to it. It's actually quite simple if you break it down. Small steps. Okay. Now, if there's one action point you can do for me, I know I mentioned a few, but if you want to just take one, identify one risky substance you can reduce or eliminate. So if it's smoking, we talked about it. There's a plan to do that. If it's alcohol, if it's illicit drug use, if it's caffeine in excessive intake, if it's any one of those food additives, pick one. So we have a plan. Don't get overwhelmed. And again, you have those resources all year long to come back to. All right. Now let's talk about building meaningful relationships. This one is near and dear to my heart because when we think about our health, a lot of us actually don't realize the impact that our relationships have on our health. There are studies of communities, especially when we start looking at like silos of communities in third world countries or like really separated, tight-knit community that don't have a lot of interruption of, the media. We actually find that they enjoy a lot of mental, emotional, and physical health stability because of a very strong social connection. So when we're talking about building meaningful relationships, it's not only good for our physical health, our mental and emotional health. And it is important to actually build nurturing relationships because it actually helps you to have a sense of more satisfied life. Having meaningful relationships can provide emotional support, can reduce your stress, and promote your overall well-being. So when you're planning your health and you're thinking about nutrition, physical activity, sleep, those things are very common and most people are aware of those things and how important they are. This one is one that is easily ignored because a lot of us don't see the point. Why is it important for me to network with my community? Why is it important for me to get to know my neighbor? If you want to get the science, I can give you some simple science here. That when you have a strong sense of meaningful connection, when you have very solid social connection, it increases the endorphins, the feel-good hormones, and actually helps you to have a higher sense of satisfaction in your own health. And also, how you value your friendship, how you value your relationship, helps you manage stress. I said earlier in a previous episode that all these pillars are not in silos. You will find that when we're talking about meaningful relationships, it relates to stress, it relates to sleep. Everything is important. So these pillars are not independent. Okay, So why is meaningful relationship important? I will get into that in a later slide, but let me get into how you can cultivate meaningful relationships. I don't want you to start like making inorganic friendship and just start being odd and weird about it. But I want you to know that cultivating positive relationships actually helps you grow, not just physical growth alone, emotional, mental growth. This deep connection actually allows you to engage in open communication, get more empathic, and even better at listening. So, strategies to cultivate that is to identify the places where you can actually be the helping hand, extend that hand of empathy, that hand of listening to other people. Also, strengthening your family and friendship bonds. You don't have to make new friendship necessarily, but the ones that are there, how robust is that relationship? Spending quality time with family and close friends is important. And you may plan to check in maybe once a week, twice a week. But if you take an inventory, look at your family and friendships, look at the ones that are starting to like fall off. The ones that should fall off, if they're not serving you, should fall off. But the ones that you can really strengthen, and maybe you've gotten so busy, maybe you should go back to those. Cultivate positive relationships if you don't have one. Strengthen the ones that are already existing and find a community. So when I talk about a community, it doesn't have to be something that is out of your leeway. It may just be your community at where you live, your geographic community. It could be social community. It can be social media groups online. It could be volunteering. It could be people that share similar interests with you. The point is, if you're looking to build meaningful relationship, it's all around you. The more aware you are of the need to build those relationships, the more those relationship opportunities will come. So find the ones that are existing, strengthen them. The relationships that are not serving you need to go, but the ones that you need to cultivate, be more intentional about doing so. You find that post-COVID, the rate of anxiety and depression is sky high because COVID actually forced us to be very isolated. And that isolation didn't serve us well. Imagine at that time when we had to, stay on a lockdown, couldn't reach out to friends and family. A lot of older people passed away from loneliness, from not having a lot of support system. And even younger people had a lot of challenges just re-engaging in the world after isolation. Some people struggled with their job, struggled with so many basic things just because they didn't have the opportunity to cultivate positive relationships. So these pillars are important, and these are some strategies to help you do so. Okay. Now, what are the benefits of meaningful relationship? I already started talking about that in the previous slide, but increased feeling of happiness and fulfillment, increased ability to actually overcome stressor. When you do things alone, you're only limited to you. But imagine having a community that supports you. Your ability to overcome stressor is even better. Your ability to overcome emotional challenges is even better. Also, lower risk of mental health concerns. I talked about anxiety and depression, and a lot of us have real life example from dealing with COVID and the isolation that resulted from that. Some people are still fighting hard to overcome that isolation. Also, building meaningful relationships helps your emotional bandwidth. It helps you develop support that helps you personally and also helps your community. And if you're one that has children, you're able to even help your children prepare for times when those relationships may be the difference between their success or failures. So you're learning for yourself, you're learning for your community, and you're also learning to impact the next generation. So your ability to overcome difficulty, become more resilient, reduce stress really hinges on being able to have these meaningful relationships. So isolation is not good for anyone. And if there's anything you can take away from it today, from this session today, is to find the opportunities to strengthen the already present relationships or to build meaningful ones that will serve you. So your workbook has this slide on it. I'm not going to dwell too much on it, but I think it's good to know where you are before you start engaging in building relationship. You need to assess your current relationships. So I've put on this table family, friends, colleagues, mentors, community. Just take an inventory of your current relationships. How strong are they right now? 10 is very strong or very close. 1 is distant. Be aware, because if you're aware of those, then you have a plan on which ones you want to strengthen or which ones are actually not beneficial for you, and maybe you need to actually let it go. So take a relationship inventory on your workbook. Take time to really reflect on that and see the relationships you want to build. Where are your needs? Where are you currently in terms of your physical, emotional bandwidth? What are you willing to take on? What are you willing to let go of? Okay. All right. So your action steps in terms of building relationships, do take time on your relationship inventory. Now, set a goal. If it's one person, either a friend, a family, an acquaintance, or a community, at least set one goal or on how you're going to meaningfully impact the current relationships you have, how you're going to be an extension of that relationship, and how you're going to receive as well. Set a goal on who you're going to impact positively this year. And lastly, commit to building new relationships, at least one. It could be maybe joining a class. If you enjoy exercise, maybe doing it in a group rather than doing it alone. If you are a part of a church community, maybe actually starting to volunteer in that church community, serving the people around. Just commit to one new relationship building activity in the first quarter. Like I said, these are my suggestions. Your steps will be customized to you. So this is your plan. Modify as you go. If this is too simple and you think you're very advanced, please, by all means, make this as challenging for yourself as you need to be so that it serves you. But if you need more time, if you need one-on-one assistance, get on with our coach to really design your plan well for you so you can achieve success and have challenges that will help you move you forward in those plans. Please get on the inside of our community. We have a paid community that can help to put your plan to life and hold you accountable. Like I said, reassess your plans periodically. It could be every month, it could be every quarter. We are building habits, so be patient with yourself. Lastly, today we talked about avoiding risky substances and building meaningful relationships. These topics can sometimes need additional support of an expert to help you get through. I understand we're in a virtual space, but if you're finding difficulty in navigating the substances, especially tobacco, drugs, alcohol, or even some relationships that may have caused you some traumas in the past, you may need to engage with a therapist, you may need to engage with a psychiatrist, you may need to talk to your physician. Please go ahead and make that happen. I don't want you to rediscover things that you need to address on this platform and have it uncatered to. So if there are things that you need to engage with your physician about, you need medications, you need prescriptions for it, please do so. At least planning makes us aware of where we need help, and that's what we're doing. Lastly, our workbook is available at livingedified.com. Go ahead and visit our website and download the workbook if you haven't done so already. Also, share this challenge with a friend. The replays will be available on all my platforms. So please make sure that you engage in this and have a plan for the next year. Don't let the next year hit you by surprise. Plan for it. Lastly, I will invite you to follow me on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to listen to our podcast, Living Edified with Dr. O. We offer nuggets weekly to help you on these pillars of lifestyle medicine so we can get your health better in the next year. Follow us on Instagram at Living Edified. And tomorrow will be the last day of this challenge where we bring it all together. I am excited for the last day. I hope you are too. Thank you for your patience in following me along this journey. I am excited. I'm grateful for giving me the opportunity to serve you in this capacity. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.